I have a secret to share with you.
Oh, go on. just between you and me.
Many years ago, like 30 years ago, I was the boyfriend of Duque's sister.
Oh, goodness me. Scandal.
Yeah.
This is.
Well, I love her a lot. And she's a
Love or loved in the past? Loved.
No, in the past.
Yes, okay, yeah.
Love. ED.
Hello there and welcome to Wrong Ways Colombia Cast. Our guest for this episode is one of Colombia's best known journalists, the current president of news at the US-based Univision. For 15 years, he was a popular and often divisive columnist at Colombia's top current affairs magazine, Semana, a position he left in April 2020. Daniel Coronell, thanks for taking the time to chat with us. And I know you're a little nervous about your English, but I'm sure you'll be fine. Pero si necesitamos, podemos hablar en Spanglish. That is to say, we can converse in a Spanish-English mix.
I'm more confident in my English than in my Irish.
Okay, well, I'll tone down my Irish English, Danielle, so that you can understand. But we'll go with English for now anyway, Danielle. And to start off with news from where you're based, and that is to say Miami, Florida, in the United States of America. Are you sleeping more easily now since Joe Biden became president? Or are you like some Hispanic voters that actually sided with Republican? I take it it's the former for you, that you're happier now that Biden is president.
Well, I'm sleeping more or less the same. But because journalism is the kingdom of the unpredictable, and probably is more interesting for a reporter Trump's government than a Biden's government. As common citizen, I believe that the American voters made a good decision because of the dignity of this country and because of the future of this democracy. But this point of the Hispanic vote is so complex. Many American strategists and analysts have believed that we are an homogeneous bloc, that more or less vote in the same sense, and is enough if the candidates say "Hola, amigos," and we are perfectly persuaded to vote for them. So they underestimate our capability to make decisions and political decisions. And we are an heterogeneous group. Most of us are Mexicans or from Mexican origin, but we are involved not in the Mexican internal politics, but with the American relationship with all of us as immigrants, first, second, or third generation. And we handle with a lot of problems derivated of the obstacles of this country for immigrants. At the same time, many of us had with us our Latin American problems and perspectives. That's why, for instance, in Florida, was easy for Trump and some of their support of his supporters, including many Colombians, Colombian politicians, to create the idea that Biden's election is the same that declare a triumph for the Castro Chavism in the United States, which is completely false. It's a baseless affirmation because, Biden is a center-right politician from the right wing of the Democratic Party, and he's certainly he is not Lenin. He's not
an Irish Catholic, Danielle, of course.
Yeah, yeah, but that kind of effective propaganda has been useful for the right politician, even in Spain. You can imagine in Colombia, in Ecuador, in Argentina, in Bolivia, in Chile, and if you see the results of that regimes like Maduro's or like Ortega's in Nicaragua, you have a speech in order to say, well, we don't want that kind of government for us. Another part of the Hispanic community, minority but existent, decide to vote for Trump because of their employees. Is basically what happened in some counties of Texas, because they are very concerned about the Biden's statement about the oil industry. So that kind of thing creates some local or regional interest that move the vote, the traditional Democratic vote, from Democratic to Trump. That's not the general attitude, but is a kind of good portrait that we are more diverse that they pretend the traditional political analysis in the United States.
Yeah, exactly. As you say, yeah, you have to kind of break it down. It's not just one big homogeneous block. Although there would be people, Daniel, who would say that the politicians in the Democrats that are known as the squad, you've got Alexandra Cortez and the others, that are on that left side. So I'm guessing for somebody who might have left socialist Venezuela and is now living in the States, that it's easy to scare them with the likes of an AOC and the leftist squad that's part of the Democratic Party. Do you get that from amongst some of your friends there?
Well, not particularly this election, but every election in the United States. Mm-hmm. Well, I remember the first election of Barack Obama. It was very interesting because the Obama's victory began a few months before of the presidential election with the regional elections, but with a perfect recipe. They use the more rightist Democrats in order to recover the areas that win the more leftist Republicans. So at the end of the day, the battle in politics is by the center of the spectrum. That kind of zone in the middle have the specific weight in order to tip the balance. And the United States is a good example, but it's not pretty different in most of the Western politics in the world, including Colombia.
Yeah, actually, you remind me of James Robinson, a man who knows Colombia quite well. His recent book, The Narrow Corridor, and that's the kind of play area that we have. You don't want to go to the extremes in terms of electing your governments. That if you do, well, then that's when the problems start. I just want to ask, because you mentioned some Colombian politicians kind of having their say on the US election. I guess you were referring to a certain Pacho Santos, ambassador there in Washington. What's your thoughts on him? Should he have been kind of quietly told to come back to Colombia after his little play in the US election? What do you think?
Well, our Ambassador Pacho Santos is a kind of living cartoon.
He looks like one.
like Bob Esponge. Yes, yeah. He needs the square pants in order to be the perfect Bob Esponge. But at the same time, he is recorded talking about the then Minister of Foreign Relations, Carlos Holmes Trujillo, as the worst possible politician and secretary at that time. But in the last few days, with the occasion that Carlos Holmes passed away, he said that he was the most brilliant guy that he met ever, and in the same record, he said that the secretary, the Department of State was like a NGO in Washington, and he said, well, we, under the strict collaboration with the state at our embassy and the embassy of the United States in Bogota, we create that weather. So he's completely inconsistent, and there are a lot of evidence of his closest connection with that kind of a small fish that people that make a small politics with the community, with the Colombian and Venezuelan community here in Florida. So he tried to use the same Uribe's rhetoric in order to disqualify every other political party different to Centro Democrático, like Castro Chavism here, and with success.
Yeah, it worked.
They increasing 200,000 votes in Miami-Dade for Trump, but at the end of the day, happily, the American election is beyond Florida, and many parts of the country decide to say stop to President Trump. And after a very controversial attitudes from the then president, including the attack to the Capitol, United States have a new president, which is good or bad, but is an institutional person trying to operate in the frame of democracy, in the respect of the Constitution and the law. And that's very important, because at the end of the day, this is about the empire of law and the state of right represent that even the most powerful people is under the law, which is different in Colombia, but not here.
Yeah, well, I do want to bring things down south of the Rio Grande into here in Bogota and Colombia, but just briefly and we'll finish on this on the US. There is a Colombian in the, well, I won't say inner circle of the Biden team, but on the Biden team, Cartagenero. His name is, so that's obviously good, you would imagine, for relations that you have a Colombian who has the ear of the US president.
Well, I imagine that the circumstances of the campaign are fresh in the inner circles of the president now. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, there are many interests and involved in that, and I don't believe that they take a revenge because of that was one of the top priorities for the new government in the United States. So I can imagine they are not comfortable with, for instance, the current ambassador in Washington. But is at the end of the day, it's not a big deal. We have had very uncomfortable ambassadors in Washington, and the result is, for instance, this is very colorful, but a couple
we like color here.
A couple of years ago, I met a former officer for a state that described me, the ambassador Carlos Lleras de la Fuente in Washington. very, very funny. He say, well, these people, which is a top officer, but in the middle bureaucracy in Washington, which is the real decision maker for the Colombian issues. Mm-hmm. I mean, is the Colombian situation is not from the desk of the President of the United States, of the Secretary of State. Is a little bit under them. Mm-hmm. This kind of people that made decisions related with Colombia, and he was ready to attend Ambassador Lleras, and he rejected the meeting because he was not the level in order to be the counterpart of one ambassador. I am, according to his description, Lleras say, well, what do you think? I am the personal representative of the government of my country and the president of my country. I need to meet with the president, or at least with the Secretary of State, not with you. And he rejected the meeting with the person that put his sign and his time in order to make possible Colombian interests in Washington. And that kind of thing, I can imagine that it was less problematic. Someone like Pacho Santos, who is at the end of the day a people with a lot of problems and ideological confusion, but a nice guy.
Yeah, I guess with Pacho, I think I could easily see myself sitting in a tienda with him and having a poker beer or something. He seems a nice guy. But yeah, that story certainly is a Colombian elitism. It was like somebody from Estrato 6 having to mingle with somebody from Estrato 3 or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Anyway,
your McDonald's routine. I am a gun club member in Bogota. That kind of thing. Like,
exactly. Yeah.
Very weird here in the Washington environment.
Very interesting. But as I said, we'll move things down here to Bogota, Daniel. And I guess people who know your work, they'll know that you're not a big fan of the Centro Democrático and, of course, the party of our current President Iván Duque and his mentor, former President Álvaro Uribe. But Duque, a young president, he can only serve for one term. So he's only got another 18 months or so left. But it's going to be defined by his handling of the pandemic. Where would you put him in that? Do you think he's done an okay job despite maybe not liking his politics?
Well, the pandemic has been a big challenge for every government on the planet. Mm-hmm. It's not easy to handle with this because there is not a kind of tradition or a instructions book in order to handle with this situation. So I believe that Duque is a mediocre as president, but he proceed with good faith in order to adopt the decisions that Colombia need to handle with this coronavirus crisis. But without success and without luck, it's terrible. Probably there is a dash in Spanish, according, I don't know if it exists in English, which is de buenas en el juego, de malas en el amor.
Probably, okay, yeah. I get the sentiment. Go on.
Okay. Probably Duque is a person de buenas en el amor because in the play is terrible.
Okay.
He made horrible decisions in order to buy the vaccines, in order to take the risk with the Russian vaccine. Well, it is pretty difficult. It's not easy for no one everywhere, but he particularly made with bad luck, with bad decisions.
Okay. And just for those who mightn't understand Spanish, I guess what you were saying is that Duque, he must be good in bed because he's not very good at dating, perhaps. That was probably the best way to put it. But in fairness, this is something...
I can imagine Duque in bed.
Oh, well, sorry, don't put that image in my head, please. No. God, we better move on quickly here. That's a terrible image to have. No, but I was going to say...
I have a secret to share with you.
Oh, go on. just between you and me.
That's incredible, and it's the first time that I thought about that. But many years ago, like 30 years ago, I was the boyfriend of Duque's sister. But
oh, goodness me, scandal! Yeah. This is.
and well, I love her a lot, and she's a
love or loved in the past. Loved.
No, in the past.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
No. Ed.
Yeah.
But I believe in, for some time we consider to marriage, and I cannot imagine my life if in this moment you can imagine. I was the brother. I was the brother-in-law of the president of Colombia with this president of Colombia, and it has been terrible, a challenge for me as human being, as a journalist. Probably I would decide to let Colombia anyway, but without opinion and without column and without but because of course we need to establish distance in these circumstances, but at the same time I believe that there is a kind of superior decision, and I am atheist, that broke that relationship on time. Yeah. In order to avoid me this situation.
Indeed. Well, who knows? If you'd stayed with her, you might be now a minister for defense or something like that.
or probably the person in charge of the vaccines.
Oh, well, yeah. Well,
or the relationship with Uribe.
Yeah. Yeah, you could be exactly. You could be Uribe's spokesman, perhaps. Anyway, that's great. I mean, on that score, though, do you remain in contact with Duque's sister? No? Nothing.
Nothing.
Okay. But in fairness, I just want to bring it back to the vaccines, because this was something that came up in our Bogotá Nights, this live program we do every Thursday in association with Federación Nacional de Prensa, live via Facebook. And my co-presenter, Ollie Pritchard, who works in your old alma mater, Externado, but he was saying, like, you know, that a lot of Colombians have too high of an expectation that in most things, Colombia normally ranks kind of 90 out of the 180 or 200 countries in the world, wherever you draw the line, that it's always kind of in the middle, so that in its vaccine procurement and handling, that it hasn't been terribly bad. It could be better, of course, but it could also be worse in a Latin American context. Would you agree with that?
I'm not sure. I believe that we are in the inferior part of the table.
Okay.
Because of the simple comparison, and I understand that it's not completely President Duque's fault. It's just part, an important part, but just part. And Colombia is living in a difficult circumstance in order to procurement of the vaccine on time, and we are living with the obvious decision that call to a quarantine and then to open the economy partially, and go back, and that's the history of many countries, not only Colombia. And well, the terrible part is that it happens in one of the most challenging parts of the economical cycle for Colombia. And it was very terrible because we lived the consequence for many years.
Yeah, well, Daniel, I want to ask, because I've been pretty skeptical of lockdowns as a measure, and other people would say, well, there's no other option. But I've interviewed the likes of the UK journalist Peter Hitchens and Dr. Jay Bhattacharya last week, who was one of the signatories, or well, the co-author of the Great Barrington Declaration. And there's a lot of things I agree with those lockdown skeptics. Like, do you think in a country like Colombia that like the cost is just going to be so huge? Like, it's only this week some schools are going back. We've had a year of children, practically a year of children not going to school. And again, that's going to hit, as you well know, the poorest people here. The richer folk have their, all the needs that they require to have online classes and things like that. But the poor folk in the barrios populares, estrato 1, 2, even 3, they just don't have the means. So, like, we are going to be living with the consequences of the measures that we took, not the virus itself, but the measures that we took to try and defeat it for years. And it's going to be badly felt in a country such as Colombia.
Well, as the national government has a part of the responsibility, some part of the responsibility lay on the mayors, and is not easy. You know that this pandemic have revealed that the essential workers are the worst payment and the most exposed people.
Yeah.
So people not essential can work from home in a safe environment. Meanwhile, in order to have food on your table and to count with medical attention and in order to preserve the urban healthy and that kind of thing, you need people that expose their lives. And it's terrible to discover that the worst compensate members of the society are the essential members of the society. And it has been part of an universal discovery that expose the inequity and the refer that we need to review and revisit many economical schemes in order to be fair with the society.
Yeah, exactly, Daniel. On the other, I was going to say, on the other hand, then you have like somebody who can kick a ball around a piece of grass, gets paid millions or hundreds of thousands of dollars per week. It just doesn't make sense. And yet our nurses and doctors and people who are trying to save our lives are fighting to get paid fairly. It's it doesn't make sense. I agree with you 100% there. There's a couple of areas I want to go on. You already mentioned Uribe, so I might maybe come back to Uribe then. He did, of course, entre comillas, he served time, house arrest last year. His case is still kind of up in the air at the moment. We don't know what's going to happen. What will happen? Where do you see this going with ex-President Álvaro Uribe? And for those who aren't that familiar, of course, he served as Colombian president from 2002 to 2010. Am I correct? Yeah. 2 terms. And he's a divisive figure, obviously. Some people say he was the president that was needed at the time. He took tough measures to batter the FARC, I guess, back into the corners of the country. But the means that he did that, of course, are very questionable. And this is what we're seeing now. There's a lot of perhaps scandal there to be uncovered. But where do you see it going for Uribe, and how will history judge him?
Well, first, Uribe is the best example that the imperil of the law is a kind of theory without application in Colombia. If there is an one individual that is beyond the law, the rest of the society have not guarantees, because this simple individual is able to make any criminal conduct without sanction. And the evidence against Uribe gained dust in the justice drawers for a long time. This arrest was the result of a minor fault in order to the general Uribe's I don't know the word for prontuario, but
oh God, you put me on the spot there. But I mean, the whole story behind Uribe, I guess.
The whole story of the evidence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
this is practically like a traffic infraction, just to bribe a couple of witnesses and to use them in order to obstruct the justice. The Supreme Court studied for many months this evidence and called him to an indagatoria in the Colombian law language, and they had the evidence against Uribe, and they are enough afraid of Uribe that he decided to write a kind of encyclopedic accusation in order to present against him. More than 1,500 pages in order to describe the evidence line by line. And Uribe, with the pretext to change of jurisdiction, I mean to choose his judge, resigned to the senator chair, and it's now under the general attorney's office, and the general attorney's office is a subordinate of his subordinate, the president of Colombia. There is not the minimal guarantee for the victims and for the society as a whole. But, I believe that the mission of journalism is not to be an assistant of the justice. I believe that the journalism has a full mission, expose the evidence in order that the citizen make his or her own judgment about what happened. And I believe that for most of the Colombian, is completely clear that Mr. Uribe broke the law. And that's enough for me. Even with this frame of impunity, which is the normal condition in Colombia since I remember.
So I guess that's what you're saying. You can rest well, or at least a little bit better, that you've done your part. You've exposed the evidence, shown where Uribe did break the law, and Colombians know it, and then that's where you can rest well. But I would say, Daniel, and you probably agree, that if Uribe ran for presidency tomorrow, he'd have a fair good chance of getting elected. Would you agree?
Of course. And if Chavez ran in Venezuela, probably has a great chance. And if Fidel Castro runs in Cuba, the same. And if Saddam Hussein runs in Iraq, same. But there is, and at this, democracy is not only the respect of the majority decision, is the respect for the previous law and the imperative of law. And that kind of political characters that present themselves as redemptors of their countries, at the same of the day, create that kind of figures. So I believe that Uribe is popular, but popularity is not necessarily related with be fair. Like President Donald Trump reached 74 million of votes in the last election. The biggest result for every Republican in the history. The second biggest result after Biden in all the United States history. But the crime, the lie, breaking the law is not validated only because of the result of the polls. We need to insist in the right thing, and the empire of law is the result of the respect of the law. No, not only the assumption that because of his majority, he's right. Because in this logic, in some moment of the history, majorities maintain that the earth was flat, and it wasn't flat.
Yeah,
and it wasn't flat anymore after a time, as a result of minority theory. Sometimes the justice, the science, the knowledge, and the journalism needs to be minority in order to be fair.
That's a very good point, Daniel. And I do try and do that here at Wrong Ways Colombia Cast, although sometimes people don't agree with my point of view either. I was going to say, in terms of popularity, it reminds me of that old saying that, like, McDonald's might be one of the most popular restaurants in the world, but that does not mean it's good for you and it's good quality food. So that it sums it up.
But it's popular without questions.
Exactly. And maybe after a few drinks, it kind of seems like a good option. It's maybe that's how people vote.
There are a lot of good options after 2 drinks.
Yeah, exactly. A couple of things I want to finish on, because I don't want this to drag on too long. We could talk all night here, Daniel. But the election coming up in about 15 months, the presidential election, I'll get to that in a second. But while we're kind of rating politicians, we have to mention, I guess, the second most important politician in the country, Mayor Claudia Lopez. How do you think she's done? Again, obviously, all these politicians are going to be judged by this unprecedented pandemic and the fallout from it. But she's been a bit inconsistent, and she didn't win too many favors when she decided to go on holiday to Costa Rica at the beginning of the year, did she?
In my view, Claudia Lopez has made a lot of mistakes. She has been arrogant, and she didn't fulfill many of her campaign
promises
and commitments. Say this, I believe that she has been a kind of fresh air in the Colombian scenario, in despite that I wait more from her. Claudia Lopez represents a lot of things. First is the reivindication of a woman. Second, of a LGBT woman. Third, she is the result of a kind of miracle of the education, which is not common in Colombia. She came from a poor barrio, from a very poor neighborhood in the south of Bogotá, and with discipline and constance, he reached an exceptional education that prepared herself as an officer, as a mayor, and probably for bigger biggest destinies than the current one. I think that her election was a Bogotá manifestos against the caudillism, because people vote for her against Uribe and against Petro. And that is especially significant for the future of Colombia, because that means that it's possible without a strong men to run the country or to run the city. And in synthesis, I believe that Claudia certainly is not a perfect person. He made a lot of mistakes, but he is still being a hub for the future of Colombia. And by my personal perspective, I hope that she reached the level of self-criticism in order to drive herself for the right path, for the correct path, in order to reivindicate people like her, because she represents perfectly the spirit of these poor people in Colombia that believe that worth to eliminate the beef of the market list in order to buy a book for the children. And this kind of a small revolution for poor and middle class families is the most intelligent way to the future in a country like ours.
Okay, well, you're saying a hope for the future, and obviously, as I mentioned, in about 15 months, we're going to have a presidential election to replace Duque. Now, some people would say, and I'm sure you don't agree, but that Gustavo Petro represents that kind of side as well, that he stands up for the little man and the people without power.
Yeah. No, and Petro represents part of that.
Mm-hmm.
And Gustavo Petro has a lot of good things with him. Gustavo Petro currently is one of the axes of the campaign, and probably the most dynamic candidate in order to propose solutions to the problems of Colombia. And that's very important. But the evaluation of a viability of a candidacy is complex, because you need at the same time to establish if the program could be aligned with the best interests of the society, and if the candidate represent the hope of the country in the change. And I expresses my doubts about Petro because of Petro's decision in the past. But at the same time, I believe that Petro is first one. Colombia needs someone like Gustavo Petro. Second, I recognize his that he's the bravest person in the denounce of the paramilitarism and relationship with the political statement in Colombia, the political establishment in Colombia. Mm-hmm. Together with Iván Cepeda. And Petro is a very important actor. We need him but probably he's not enough.
Okay. So you're saying he won't. Your opinion is that unlikely he will be elected president. I mean, look, for Colombia to go, we were talking about the US earlier in terms of left and right. For Colombia to go anyways to the left would be a dramatic turn.
No, more dramatic in the Colombian case.
Mm-hmm,
why?
Of course.
Because most of the Colombian of this generation grew under the guerrillas' shadow. Mm-hmm. in the Colombian campaigns, and thus create the idea that the left is close to the violence. And on the other hand, we have the largest border with Venezuela that any other country. And we are living daily under the impression that Venezuelans are living terrible circumstances because of Chavez and Maduro's administration. So it's not easy to persuade most of the Colombian that people that represent the left could be the appropriate decision in this point of the history. It's not my case. I believe that Colombia need to examine with a wide judgment, but the result of the last election proved that Duque could be defeated for any other candidate, with the exception of Petro. And my honest fear, is that that kind of situation is susceptible to be repeated in 2022. I don't want, but it's possible. And for in 2018, I decided in the first round, in the first election, to vote for De La Calle. Why? Because De La Calle represents a liberal point of view, and at the same time represented the defense of the peace agreement with FARC, which for me is part of the right path to the civilization of our country. But De La Calle was defeated, and in the second round, the candidates was the Uribe's candidate, Iván Duque, the brother of, but basically Uribe's candidate, and on the other hand, Gustavo Petro.
Mm-hmm.
And
the extremes.
It was my feeling and the polls prediction that Petro was not able to defeat Duque in the second round. And so as a citizen, I consider, well, I am not comfortable voting for Petro, but if Petro had the real possibility to be the new president, I will vote for him. But this is too bad, because on one hand, I don't believe in Petro, and on the other hand, he was not able to win. So I prefer to vote to vote blank.
Yeah, but voto in blanco, or white vote, so basically voting for nobody.
Yeah, which is my decision and the decision of less than 1 million people, 800,000. And Duque defeat Petro for more than 2 million votes.
But do you think also that maybe by you asking people or publicly announcing that you were going to vote white as the exact translation, voto in blanco, that maybe other people just decided they didn't go to vote at all? and that may have voted for Petro or not?
No.
No.
In
Okay.
my case, I didn't have any influence, and I
Oh,
don't
come
have
on now, Dan. You, of course, you had influence.
no. Probably for my mother, but she voted for Petro
Yeah. Okay. Well, there you go.
because she decided, which is valid, that without consideration of the utility of vote, we need to vote for the how do you say mal menor?
Oh, well, the least worst, I guess. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
and that was the roof of her decision, and it's
Yeah.
valid. I particularly believe that Petro was a bad mayor for Bogotá and make horrible decision in his pass of the legislative power, like vote for Alejandro Ordóñez as general inspector,
Mm-hmm.
and that kind of thing is enough argument in order to don't vote for him at that time. In this moment, I persuade myself in a slow motion.
Okay.
My first declaration is, if we have to decide between Tomás Uribe and Gustavo Petro, I will vote for Gustavo Petro. This is my first child step. I'm not full convinced of the convenience to vote for Petro, and I believe that that Colombia need another choices, because this predicament between Uribe or Uribe's puppet and Petro is not the best for Colombia. But
Okay.
we are 13 months before of the first round, and I believe that probably emerge a different candidate with viability in order to face Petro and Uribe's puppet.
Well, actually, I have to say, just going back to 2018, I actually wrote a blog story in my blog in El Tiempo endorsing Humberto de la Calle as well, for that very reason, that it was the continuity from the peace process. And I kind of figured, in a similar sense, perhaps to Joe Biden now in the US, that he was kind of he would have been a holding president, an older statesman, an elder statesman, kind of hold the role for 4 years and then see what happens in 2022. But and of course, I did also realize that de la Calle had no chance. So I wrote an article after that then saying that if Colombians were voting tactically, who didn't want the Uribe candidate Duque, that they should have voted for Sergio Fajardo. Now, do you think Fajardo will run again? I mean, he's tainted now, isn't he, with the whole scandal of Hidroituango, the hydroelectric dam outside Medellin. He's a damaged candidate now, isn't he?
Well, he probably he will present, and probably the center will have a consult in order to choose the candidate. I'm not sure that Fajardo will be the appropriate candidate for these times.
Yeah.
And I cross my fingers that probably they will find another kind of candidate. So let me try to express this, Brenda. But we won't have a perfect candidate the next election. We need to walk beyond of the perfection of the candidacy. My first aspiration, my first ambition is that Colombia will find a candidate with the equity church of the unconformity.
Okay.
So is this guy is not the perfect one. I have some difference with this guy, but I know that he will be the best possible work in this moment. Some of Petro's supporters believe that Petro's election is the beginning of a revolution that changed the status quo in Colombia for in a definitive way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe that's the moment, and I believe that that kind of militancy in this moment could be counterproductive in order to defeat Uribe, because there are more anti-Uribism than Petrism or Colombia or human Colombian, like they prefer to call themselves. And we need this minimal point of agreement in order to choose a candidate that was not the charm prince that we are waiting for, but good enough in order to superior the horrible times of Uribe, and with an alternative that don't represent the same that many people fear in this moment because of our neighborhood, because of our circumstances.
Yeah. Well, we have to see then. There might be, as you said, not exactly a knight in shining armor, but some sort of a candidate that meets all those requirements. You mentioned a guy, male, I guess you're referring to, but of course, rumors that our vice president, Marta Lucia Ramirez, could we go back to the old liberal conservative duopoly that we had for centuries here? Does she have a chance at all? I don't think she does.
No, I don't know, because if you told me 4 years ago that Iván Duque will be the next president of Colombia, you say, "Well, Brendan, you are crazy." Who's Iván Duque? But we are living now here, but I believe that Uribe, which is an old fox of this activity, is smelling the need to present one candidate that don't represent the level of radical Uribism. So I believe that he won't be Tomás Uribe.
Okay.
Probably someone like Luis Alberto Moreno, a conservative gentleman with a international background, which is able to eat caviar and not only sancocho in a olla like Uribe, and that kind of thing that present the conservatism and their other worry. But at the same time, I believe that Colombia need to walk in the path of more democracy, more opportunities for poor people, and at the same time to preserve the Constitution. And my question, only between you and myself,
and a few viewers on YouTube, yeah,
and our YouTube,
yeah,
is hypothesis. It's just a hypothetical scenario.
Mm-hmm.
If we Colombians elect Gustavo Petro in 2022, he will left the chair in 2026?
That's the question. Oh, will he leave it?
That's a question.
Okay. You're kind of you're bringing me on a path of Chavez-like or something, that there'll be a few changes in the law. And
no, because or Uribe in his first campaign talk about the need to preserve the Constitution and to don't introduce the re-election. I have the evidence that he maintained that, and the last time he was trying to reach a third period through a referendum. So that kind of providential people, that miracle guy who is able to drive us through the desert in order to reach the perfect land, is very counterproductive for democracy.
yeah,
And there is, so the old adage that we need to change frequently presidents and diapers, and for the same reason.
Yeah, exactly. They can get a bit shitty indeed. We can say that. Just to wrap this up, because I mean we've been an hour, I think, so we've talked a lot, and we could talk all night. As I said, we'll have to have you back. But just to wrap up then on the elections, the one-term limit, though, in a sentence or two, do you think there should be the possibility for re-election, or are you happy with just the one-term president?
No, I believe that in a country like Colombia, one term is more than enough.
Okay. What about the famous 5-year plans that they used to do in Russia? You can't do that now if you're a president here. You've only got 4 years.
And with Medvedev in the middle of the period or something like that, that kind of strongman regime is absolutely toxic for democracy. And we don't need a strongman from right or from left. We need to create a democracy that guarantees the best opportunity for everyone, and the alternance in the power. To create a monopolitical spectrum in any country has been counterproductive. It's terrible. And no, even under the best reasons, or in the best interest reasons, because of we are commitment with this reform that could be fair for the people. We need 4 more years. No, you need to present your program to the people in order to win a new election with a new candidate. But if you are not essential, or if there is not possible replace for you, the democracy is in problem.
Well, here to that. I certainly agree. Exactly. Couple of final things then, Daniel, because we're coming up. I think we've an hour already on the clock here. So hopefully we'll have you back in a few months, and we'll see maybe when we know who the candidates are, and we can have a right talk about the presidential election. But just I mentioned at the start, of course, that you used to write for Semana. Semana's gone in some people think in a slightly right-wing direction of late, in a Fox News style direction. So they say. What are your thoughts on the new director there, Vicky Dávila? Is she somebody that you exchange Christmas cards with?
Well, Federico Fellini, famous Italian movie director, had a sentence in order to express his emotion when a young director presents his or her opera prima movie to his concept. And the sentence is simple. Yo nunca había visto nada igual.
Okay. I've never seen anything like that, I guess. Yeah, in a sense. Yeah.
Yeah. That's my opinion of Semana. of the current Semana.
So you won't be going back to write for Semana anyway, that's for sure.
No, probably not. And they are not interested, certainly, to have me, but probably no, never.
Well, let's imagine maybe a hypothetical scenario again. If Vicky Dávila was to give you a call, she might hear this interview or whatever and thought, oh, let's have Daniel Coronell on as a guest. Would you be happy to be a guest on Vicky Dávila's program?
I believe the situation is not probably. I'm probably, I say no.
Okay. Anyway, we'll leave that one there. Finally, then, because we mentioned Externado, the university here, and it's a good institution to throw out. That sounds a bit rude, but to roll out journalists. Any budding journalists or people thinking of entering into journalism, young people, what advice would you give them? We were talking before we started recording. It's a difficult game these days. It's even harder now than it was perhaps 20 years ago. So what advice would you give to somebody who wants to be the next Daniel Coronell or Daniela Coronell?
No, please try your own way, not mine. I suffer a lot. Look my hair.
I'm losing it.
But sincerely, I believe that journalism studies must be a postgraduate studies and a graduate study. And you need to take advantage of undergraduate studies in order to learn economy or law or sociology or history that could be very useful. Probably any smart person is able to learn most of the office tasks in less than 1 year here in a newsroom. But you need this theory and scientist context in order to take advantage of that. And in the last few months, our star correspondent has not been a reporter in the front line of the war or covering, or probably some of them covering Capitol Hill because of the Trump's government. But our most consulting correspondent has been a cardiologist doctor who is the senior correspondent for health here in Univision. And it has been all an experience that we need to be that kind of person with Renaissance formation, with universal point of view in order to reach the better of this circumstance, in order to reinterpret and to give to the people. So yeah, journalism is that kind of thing that is not a job for your boss in order to get a check twice per month. Journalism is served to the people with the best of your knowledge and with your best of your ethics. And that's why probably it's easier if you learn journalism after another career.
Yeah, very interesting. Actually, it's kind of the way I went about it as well. I did history, sociology, and politics as an undergrad. But you should have a word with La Cancelleria here, Daniel, because they've been insisting, and it's been an ongoing saga for me with visas, that if you're a journalist, you have to present degrees that you're now. I did do an add-on degree as a journalist, so I do actually have a degree in journalism. But a lot of journalists, as you say, don't have that. They become journalists just by chance. So La Cancelleria,
and it is in wrong way according to the Colombian rules, because you don't need a professional title of journalism in Colombia in order to exercise journalism. So you need to complain because of their double standard. Because if you don't need to be a journalist title in order to exercise journalism in Colombia, they can ask you a journalism title from UK or wherever
Ireland, yeah.
in order to exercise journalism in Colombia.
Yeah, I know. At the moment, I'm kind of relaxed because I have my visa, so I'm happy. But I think the next interview we do, we'll have to talk about visa issues here, because there's been a few high-profile cases of some Americans and Germans getting visas after they were influencers and went on social media campaigns. But that's another story for another day, because we could talk a long time. No,
that is part of the Colombian establishment perception. They consider that the Colombian journalism is a neat bath, but the international scrutiny and journalism is a bath that they don't need.
Exactly. Only if you talk very positively about the country and say that everything is wonderful and amazing, then it's great.
No, you are never enough brown nose for them, because they deserve the glory and the triumph and the paradise because of the sacrifice that they are making for the Colombian and its future.
Okay. Well, look, anyway, I think that's a perfect place to leave it. You've been excellent with your time. I think we've gone well over the hour. As I said, maybe in a few months' time, if I'm still doing this and we're all still here, we'll talk about the presidential election in more detail, when maybe we'll have a better idea of the candidates, and this mysterious candidate that we're looking for might come out of the woodwork from somewhere. And by the way, your English was excellent. So top marks to your teacher, who is known to us here. He's a common friend. So well done on the English, Daniel. There was no problem at all. By the way, people can read your work. Outside of Univision, you also the Los Danieles, isn't there, the website?
What?
Yeah, so people can check out your work there in Espanol. But thanks a million for that, Daniel. We'll be in touch again. That is our lot for this episode of Wrong Ways Colombia Cast. If you want to get in touch with me, remember, guys, the Twitter handle is @WWayCorrigan. But until the next time, ciao, ciao.
Ciao, ciao.